Alright, hello Tumblr. Trying to figure out where this camera is. This is going to be one of my second actual lengthy videos. I posted one a long time ago, but I don't think anybody really saw it. This is going to be my first kind of little video content about cob and natural building. So bear with me. I've never really done this before. I'm trying to spread this information, add a little bit more content that's already out there, directly from books that you can buy. I know not everybody is interested in cob enough to justify them purchasing a book on it, so maybe this will help spark some interest, bring a little bit better understanding of what cob is. I'm going to be reading from the Hand Sculpted House by Ianto Evans, Michael G. Smith, and Linda Smiley. And without further ado, I suppose I may as well just jump right into this here. I've selected a couple of little excerpts from this. It's kind of scattered around in the first introduction area of the book. So, what is cob? Cob is a structural composite of earth, straw, water, sand, and clay, hand sculpted into buildings while still pliable. There are no forms as in rammed earth, no bricks as in adobe, no additives or chemicals, and no need for machinery. Cob is not new and not untested. Its viability has been thoroughly proved all over the world for centuries and probably millennia. But despite great public enthusiasm for natural building, most how-to building books and architectural histories contain hardly a mention of this common, almost universal building technique. What is cob? Is it adobe? As said before, cob is a composite building material, a mixture of earth, clay, sand, straw, and water, hand-worked into monolithic earthen walls. No forms, no cement, no ramming, and no machinery are needed. Adobe means sun-dried earthen bricks, the material they are made of, and the resultant earthen buildings. The word cob itself comes from an Old English root, meaning a lump or rounded mass. This term refers to the material itself, to buildings made of it, and to a traditional building technique used for centuries in Europe, in rainy, cold, windy climates as far north as the latitude of Alaska. Cob is one of many methods for building with raw earth, the world's most common construction material. In simplicity of construction and freedom of design, cob surpasses adobe excuse me, and related techniques such as rammed earth and compressed earth bricks. Since you don't need straight forms or rectilinear molds, cob lends itself to organic shapes, excuse me, a little allergies I guess, curved walls, arches, and vaults. Building with cob is a sensory and aesthetic experience much like sculpting with clay. Unlike adobe, cob can easily be built in cool, wet climates such as the Pacific Northwest. Its resistance to rain and cold makes cob well suited to all but the coldest parts of America, where it may need additional insulation. Why hadn't I heard of cob until recently? Cob was little known in North America until the Cobb Cottage Company reintroduced it in the 1990s. However, the technique was once common in the Southwest, where it was called puddled, coursed, or monolithic adobe. Some early settlers in the Northeast also built with cob. More recently, government regulations have supported the lumber industry's sales needs by not recognizing earth as a suitable building material. Is cob durable? What about in rainy places? In England, there are tens of thousands of comfortable cob homes, many of which have been used for more than 5 centuries. In Yemen, a medieval 10-story skyscrapers are part cob, as is Taos Pueblo, continuously inhabited for 900 years. A large part of both the Great Pyramid and the Great Wall of China are earth, and the oldest known human dwellings, earthen of course, in Jericho, have survived 9,000 years. So your cob house should easily outlast neighboring stud frames designed for only about 50 years of service. Like any other kind of structure, cob buildings need good roofs and adequate foundations to protect them from water damage. Traditionally, cob walls are protected from driven rain with a lime plaster or stucco, though in protected places in England, unplastered walls have stood for centuries. Aren't cob houses cold and damp inside? Winter visitors to our cob buildings in the Oregon rainforest often comment on how warm and dry they feel. Cob walls, 1 to 2 feet thick, provide immense thermal mass and adequate insulation, ideal for passive solar construction. Cob structures require little additional heating in winter and remain cool and comfortable on hot summer days. As it is fireproof, cob can be used for building ovens, stoves, and chimneys, and is ideal for completely unburnable houses in forest fire areas. One of our favorite designs is a cob bench or bed heated by the flue of a wood-burning stove. What about earthquakes? No building system is guaranteed against earthquakes, but cob buildings have a good survival record in seismic zones. Unlike adobe, held together mostly by gravity, cob buildings are locked together by an invisible three-dimensional textile of interwoven straw with thousands of individual stems giving great overall strength. A cob mansion in Nelson, New Zealand has survived 150 years in one of the world's most active seismic zones, enduring 2 major earthquakes without a crack while the town around it collapsed. The curve and taper characteristic of Oregon cob walls make them even stronger. Will cob make a normal big square house? Absolutely. It can be as big as you need it, but don't sacrifice quality for size. Do you want a work of art or just square footage? Yes, you can make your walls square, but it will cost extra time and effort or money. Nature doesn't provide square. We have to carefully true it up, whether we milled a round tree into square boards or cut round stone square for a rock wall. Earth's yearning to be curved and sculptural gives cob walls an aesthetic quality we can't otherwise achieve. What does a cob cottage cost? Cob is one of the least expensive building materials imaginable. Often the soil removed during site work is enough to build the walls. With inventiveness and forethought, the costs of other components such as doors, windows, floors, and so forth can be extensively reduced. Side note, you may also build a floor out of cob. You don't need to have any sort of wooden or carpet floors if you don't wish. Anyway, total building expenses will depend upon size, design, your creativity and organization, and how much you want to be involved. Most of us go to work to pay someone else to build our houses. We also pay for their profit, mistakes, transport, overheads, and bad luck. Above all, we pay loan institutions to borrow their money, then build under their constraints. By being your own builder, you can manufacture your own materials, and by going slowly and carefully, your house could cost 1/10 of what you'd buy one for. How fast can I build a cob house? It takes a long time to make a good house, whatever the materials. But in dry weather, you can build a 2-story wall in a month. A determined owner-builder can move into a modest cob house in less than a year. In wood construction, the frame is a tiny part of the work, but a cob wall once built is finished, apart from the plaster. Pipes and wires are laid directly in place, and there's no need for drywall, tape, spackling, sanding, painting, sheathing, or vapor barriers. Yet racing to build fast is missing the whole point and half the fun. Unlike conventional modern building with its frantic pace, power tools, and scope for errors and accidents, cob making is a peaceful, meditative, and rhythmic experience. Building cob is faster, easier, and more enjoyable with a team, so it lends itself to community projects, building parties, and workshops. What about building codes? Codes today protect the corporate manufacturers of building components better than homeowners. Not surprisingly, there is no code for cob, though nowhere is earthen building prohibited. Many cob builders choose not to involve building officials and have had few problems. Legally permitted cob buildings are beginning to appear, but there is considerable expense and paperwork involved, as with any permit. Can I find a competent builder? With cob construction now a decade old in North America, professional contractors are beginning to appear. Excuse me. We keep a roster at the Cob Cottage Company. Contact us. I will include information about this book and the Cob Cottage Company in the description below. But rather than hiring a builder, consider building for yourself. If you're personally involved, you'll likely get a better job. Many cob builders we know are middle-aged or elderly or are women. You don't need expensive equipment or lengthy training to learn the basics of this friendly, safe, and forgiving medium. And then on to our next part. This is a really important part for me personally about natural building. As soon as I read this, it just really stuck out and hit me. This is probably one of my favorite parts that I've read in this book so far about this whole phenomenon, and I really hope it can shed some light on the importance of this phenomenon that I'm talking about, of natural building and self-sufficiency and that sort of thing. Peasants and farmers. This is Ianto speaking, by the way. This is him writing from his experience. I once heard a Chilean named Ana Stern give a speech on the difference between peasants and farmers in Mexico. Peasants, she said, satisfy their own basic needs. They grow their own food, build the houses they live in, and often make their own clothes. Most peasants collect medicinal herbs, treat medicinal emergencies, and supply their family entertainment. They experience fully what they do every day. They have time. They feel joy. Their culture is integral. It makes sense. Farmers, by contrast, grow things to sell. With what they earn from their products, they buy their groceries, they buy their building materials, their clothes, their entertainment, and they buy their medical insurance. They must also buy into a system which demands that they drive to market, pay taxes, perhaps send their kids to agricultural college. Increasingly, they must buy machinery, farm, seeds, and farm chemicals. I said farm randomly there. I meant farm chemicals. My bad. Anyway, farmers have no time to directly enjoy satisfying their own needs, so they purchase their satisfactions. They buy ready-made clothing and convenience foods. I've thought a lot about Anna's presentation. Her definition shook my worldview. In her terms, we are all farmers. There are few peasants living in the United States today. I'd always felt comfortable in the traditional villages of Africa and Latin America, and now I understood why. The parts of my own life that I truly enjoy are the peasant parts, the parts I don't pay for, the parts that I myself create. A life of working for someone else and paying for basic needs is essentially unsatisfying. Why? Because our links to nature are severed when we live that way. Why do we grow garden vegetables? It's not the easiest way to obtain food. The simplest cost-benefit analysis will show that it's hard to make the same money growing lettuce as we do going to the office. Otherwise, wouldn't most of us be lettuce farmers? We grow food, or flowers, for completeness, for the grounded understanding that comes from putting seeds in the ground and tending them, feeding them, watering, picking, and eating them. To be complete, we need to have a constant awareness of our cosmic bearings, where and when we fit into nature's patterns. If you compost your excrement as the Chinese do, use your own urine for fertilizer, and grow your own vegetable seeds on the plants you raise, the cycle is complete. You have inserted yourself into a completely visible ring of cause and effect. You experience the whole natural process, and the better you observe how that process works, the easier you slide into it. So that was the first part of this. That's probably my favorite part about this book so far that I have read. I'm going to go on to one more part here and wrap it up. So, the importance of housing yourself. The peasant-farmer analogy works equally well for houses. For most of history, most of us humans have created our own homes. The whole family helped when work was too heavy or too slow. The entire community assisted when the work required it, as with an Amish barn raising. Only recently have we traded with those outside of our friends and family in order to have homes. At first, we traded only for parts or techniques beyond the reach of the homemade. The village blacksmith made the hinges, and we gave him eggs. Later, we paid money to skilled local specialists for more durable, better-made work. Then, not long ago, we started to pay complete strangers in different and distant corporations our hard-earned cash to supply us with skilled trades and pre-assembled components. To earn that money, we had to grow a surplus. The self-sufficient plot was no longer big enough, and I apparently can't speak. Peasants became farmers, yet small landholders often can't survive in a cash economy. Their land is sold to a bigger operator. Not having land, they don't have access to the earth, rock, trees, or straw that were previously at hand for building materials. In order to pay for housing, perhaps they turn to producing artifacts or services to sell. That's the stage set. We go to jobs doing possibly meaningless work for 30, 40, or 50 years to pay for a house with which we no longer have any direct connection. How many of us have been in a steel mill or a drywall factory? If we have, do we enjoy what we smell and feel and hear there? When school children take a field trip to the slaughterhouse, they stop eating meat. When we see how building components are made, we seek better ways to house ourselves. The natural building movement has helped humans reconnect with our tradition of self-reliant shelter, surely one of our natural rights. With Cobb, we aren't banging together ready-made components bought at a chain store. With Cobb, we take the free building materials from the ground beneath our feet, good clean dirt, and shape it to make floors, walls, plasters, homes. Homes so beautiful, they apparently make grown men cry. Most of the buildings most of us live and work in are soulless, anti-ecological, and ugly. We close our senses when we are in them. But there's another kind of architecture, one that feeds the soul and spirit, that helps us feel good, that elevates our daily lives. The old dominion over nature days are past. We need an ecological architecture that reestablishes us in our place in nature, where we are constantly reminded of the glory of the world around us. In creating natural buildings, you will create ecstatic spaces, a place where your spirit can soar. A shift in attitude comes of making what you need for yourself. You change your outlook from "I want, so I have to buy" to "what's here and what can I do best with it." The first attitude is how a consumer society approaches life. The second is how people in traditional societies have always looked at their world. It's called creativity, and it's enormously satisfying. Once you learn to create your basic building materials from the ground beneath your feet, your vision opens up. Now you see the role of roundwood thinnings in framing a roof and realize how easy it is to build door frames from poles, to shovel sod onto your roof, to set frameless glass shards for windows into a cob wall. A world of possibilities opens. But I don't have all time for that. When you have a real job and work for a living and raise 3 kids, there just isn't time for such a laid-back attitude. Someone's got to pay the bills. Anyway, we don't own a building site. In this book, we'll address all these concerns and tell the stories of people who have overcome them. We'll show that it's not the house building that many of us can't afford, but rather the drive to work, to pay for the gas, to get to work, to pay income tax so we can pay the remainder of the bank to borrow their house to live in. Central to building your own natural house is a lifestyle change that frees you from tedium and feeling trapped by debt. If you follow the thought processes and building principles explored in this book, your housing costs may almost disappear, creating an opportunity for you to take a sabbatical and create a house that really inspires you. Most importantly, remember that building is not something you do in a rush to get a finished structure. Both building and living in your house can be a spiritual process of daily joy, reflection, and connection with nature. You are not producing a product. Take the time to enjoy all of the process. And that's about it. That wraps up my first little installment here in reading from the Hand Sculpted House. There you go. Once again, by Ianto Evans, Michael G. Smith, and Linda Smiley. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.